Give KenWheeler a little listen here. He's got something to say about unifying gravity, magnetism, electricity, and dielectricity as one thing only. So that's unifying gravity, magnetism, and electricity and dielectricity as one thing. I know he can explain it better.
I'd like to make a simple video on field theory that hopefully even a 12-year-old child could understand. Now, instead of looking this as a circle, just think it as an infinite point without spatial volume. And if we look at it this way, we're more easily able to understand that. We think of this as an indivisible line that actually has no extension. We're talking about unmanifest inertia, or what quantum mechanics and general relativity and their insanity have called dark matter or quantum fluid, which is just nothing other than a euphemism for what Tesla, Heaviside, Steinmetz, Faraday, and all the greats of electrical theory that gave us 100% of our current electrical grid and system. Einstein gave us nothing of that. Nothing. Okay? He invented nothing, he discovered nothing, and his quote-unquote theory of relativity is mostly stolen from Henri Poincaré. Excuse me, my French is not so great. Henri Poincaré. I'm sure I'm still pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, as far as field theory, we only have two field modalities, and we have one field. There is only one field. And we think in terms of electrostatics, like dielectricity. We think in terms of magnetic field, electrical, and then we think of gravitational field. But ultimately, I hope to make this really fast and simple for you to understand it, that there's only one field, and there's the loss of that field as expressed by magnetism, i.e. the loss of inertia, because there's only two principles that rule the entire universe: force and motion, and inertia and acceleration. Well, how do you tie all four of them together rationally? Now, actually, let me show you this. Now, as you've seen underneath the ferrocell, a magnet, doesn't matter what shape it is, looks exactly like this. It looks like a torus. It looks like a well, of course, most people can't visualize that. I can. A reciprocating processional hyperboloid, which sounds complicated, but is divinely simplex. Now, you see this spirograph-like hypertrochoidal pattern. If you're able to get it underneath the camera better, I'll show it to you in a slightly uncompressed fashion. There you go. You actually see a torus, a toroid, a spirograph, a hypertrochoid. That's the expression of the loss of inertia. Now, as Faraday called magnetism, he called it the dielectric field. But what does that mean specifically? It means that the necessitated loss of inertia, i.e. the ether, must be expressed as the creation of space, and of course the posterior attribute of the creation of space is a measure of movements of magnitude, which we call time, but of course time does not exist. Time is a human contrivance. Here we have dielectricity with absolutely no manifestation as a linear propagation. Now, we think of a single point, i.e. the ether, as being unmanifest. A longitudinal propagation, such as found in electromagnetism, i.e. radio or regular light, obviously has a longitudinal pulse between each waveform of the electrical value and the magnetic value of the waveform of the transverse electromagnetism. Now, here we have electricity, which, by the way, is phi times psi q in Planck electrification. Electricity is nothing other than the hybrid of electricity and magnetism operating together, which is found in, obviously, frequency and amplitude, constantly pulsing back and forth like this. Well, what frequency? What amplitude? Obviously, we have the entire EM spectrum, and we have electricity. So electricity is a hybrid of dielectricity and of magnetism, operating at a frequency and an amplitude, obviously so. Now, in the case of, and to make this really simple so that a child could understand, like electromagnet that pulls up cars, obviously an enormous amount of voltage is actually dropped to the lifter, like the lifter magnet that picks up dead cars and re-scraps out things. Now, electricity doesn't terminate as magnetism, or doesn't terminate into magnetism, by dumping that charge and creating a large electromagnet, it loses its dielectric component. So electricity terminates not into magnetism as wrongly thought, but as magnetism by losing its dielectric component. In other words, all that electricity that is actually brought through electromagnet to lift up dead cars so they could be scrapped is nothing other than the loss of the dielectric component of electricity, which means you have an extremely high Gauss field that is able to pick up multi-ton cars with that electromagnet. It is that electricity terminates as magnetism by losing its dielectric component, not into magnetism, but as magnetism, because electricity is the hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. Phi times psi equals Q, Planck, and electrification. Electricity, by definition, denotatively, is the combination of two things, dielectricity and magnetism. So by losing its dielectric component, the electricity manifests itself in the electromagnet, for example, as a huge, enormous, very powerful, high Gauss magnetic field. Now, where does gravity come into play? Well, we think gravity is something different. Now, we know in galactic jets, we see enormous amounts of shooting matter shooting out billions of light years at either end of galactic jets. Now, the necessary loss of inertia, which manifests itself as longitudinal dielectricity, is an equation. It's 1 over phi to the power of -3, which some people would think would be a number, but it's actually an expression. And that expression, if we were to think of this as a 0 point, which is invisible rather than seeing the circle, that equation necessitates the expression, which we know that the attributional nature of the ether expresses itself as longitudinal dielectricity by that equation that I discovered 12 years ago. So where does gravity come into play? Gravity, like electricity, is nothing other than a hybrid. So what is gravity? Well, we talk about what denotes gravity. We're talking about mass, i.e. matter. Matter is nothing more than a dielectric condensate. Okay, it's like taking carbon dioxide and freezing it to its solid state. Now, obviously, that is a huge hyperbole, and that's a supreme oversimplification, but this is matter. Okay, obviously, extremely simplex. Let's just think of this as the hydrogen atom. Even that is too simple, obviously, this model, of course. But we have, as of course modern science likes to say, well, 99.99999% of an atom is empty space. That's not true. This supposed empty space in here, and an atom is magnetodielectricity, and what we think are electron atoms. Now, by the way, Tesla, Heaviside, Steinmetz, Faraday, on and on, even the discoverer, J.J. Thomson of the quote-unquote electron, denied for a long time that the electron is a particle. There's absolutely no such thing as an electron particle. And email me if you want a huge list of logical reasoning behind this. But the premise that we have that wires are like huge rain sticks that little electron atoms are pouring through. Oliver Heaviside called this, I think he called it a mind virus. Eric Dollard called it the same thing. Tesla, on 2 different occasions, said that the notion that the electron was a particle was absolutely absurd. So everybody that gave you 100% of our current electrical grid, these people weren't stupid, by the way. But everything now is based upon Greek atomism. That's all general relativity and quantum mechanics are, is nothing other than atomism. If you don't know what atomism is, then I suggest you look it up. It basically means that the whole universe is just a giant bag of magical, unseen particles rolling around like BBs and volleyballs, you know, they're bumping into each other. And of course, they've never defined a field. Never. They never will define a field because fields are particle-free. They'll never define instantaneous action at a distance, such as EPR. Look up EPR paradox. But we know that it exists. See, faster than light travel, instantaneous action at a distance contradicts the entire premise of general relativity and quantum mechanics, and so does the denotation of the term field, which has never been explained, never been defined. Human understanding is still in the Stone Ages. We think are so advanced with our computers and our TV sets, but ultimately we're pretty stupid. So ultimately, let's look again. Remember back to the ferrocell. Like I said, you see this again? This toroidal form that you see underneath the ferrocell? That's magnetism as painted by light. Tim van der Rijl's wonderful invention. So you could think of this as a 0-point ether pressure that has been released, longitudinal. The expression of that form in transverse reciprocating processional hyperboloid is magnetism. We have ultimately only one field, dielectricity. we have the loss of that field's potential, just like releasing charge on a battery, for example. And the release of that field, i.e. inertia, i.e. dielectricity, is force in motion. Okay, 100% of the visible universe is this, is magnetism. Okay, the entire atomic structure of an atom in picometers, as it measured in picometers, is due to magnetism, not dielectricity. So we have one field, one release of that field's potential, i.e. the loss of that inertia, as expressed in force and motion, and we have two field modalities, one being electricity, okay, frequency and amplitude, and the other one being gravity, which is a dielectric condensate. We have a nucleus, okay. Right here we have tons of magnetodielectric space created. Okay, space is not a thing. Space is neither a field nor a force. Space acts on nothing. Space does nothing. This is the ultimate brain virus and huge flaw that Tesla says over and over again, as well as others, of general relativity, is reified space as something that does something. It's like saying a shadow has done something, or a shadow is the absence of something. Okay, the absence of inertia. Let's just consider the central point here, which is not a point, it's even prior to a point, that the loss of that inertia is expressed in force and motion, leaves behind it a wake that us humans and our stupidity, all of us, call space. Okay, we live in it, we breathe in it because we're all existential beings, but that space is neither a field nor a force. It does nothing and it acts on nothing. So here we have a dielectric condensate we call mass or matter, in its most simplex form, obviously. An oversimplification, to be sure, with this model, which is a toroflux, by the way. This cute little toy is called a toroflux. It's a neat little device that every little child should have that gets them thinking in multi-dimensional geometric fashions. So, that's the irreducible simplicity of the universe. I have to stick fast to this and say that it's absolutely irrefutable. As far as a grand unified theory, I mean, it's already been discovered. Whether anybody accepts it or not, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just happy to understand it. But we only have one field, that's dielectricity, i.e. the ether, expressed longitudinally. That's the longitudinal pulse found within transverse electromagnetism. We have the loss of that inertia, the loss of that acceleration as expressed by force and motion. Now, as I told you in prior videos, there's a huge difference, especially in field theory, between acceleration and motion. Increasing acceleration in terms of gravity, for example, which is an acceleration towards dielectric avoidance. Okay? Gravity is nothing other than dielectricity. Gravity is no different than turning on your TV set and actually shining a light off from the side and you seeing the little dust particles actually head to the TV set and stick to the TV set. That's why you're finding your TV set, especially the little CRT tubes, got so dusty. The dust in the air would go gravitate to the front of the That is the exact same thing as gravity. People think that that is an electrostatic charge, or like you charge a balloon up and you pull someone's hair to it. That same acceleration, not force, that same acceleration is what we ignorantly call gravity. Gravity itself is an autonomous acceleration, of which a lot of people call it incorrectly a force, does not exist. It's like, what do you mean gravity doesn't exist? Obviously I can drop this and there's gravity. What I mean specifically is that gravity does not exist. It is not an autonomous force. It's definitely not a force, which of course even the idiots of general relativity and quantum mechanics will admit to. They call it an acceleration, but an acceleration of what by what? We need explanations, not descriptions, and all that general relativity and quantum mechanics provides are descriptions, not explanations. It is a dielectric acceleration. It's dielectric avoidance. Okay, it is the loss of force and motion, because there are no straight lines in the universe. What we think are straight lines in the universe are infinitely slightly curved. There's not a single straight line anywhere in the universe. None, nowhere, ever, never. It doesn't exist. So, hopefully I made that very simple. We have one field. We have the loss of that field expressed as force and motion, and we have two field modalities. One expressed as a dielectric condensate, which we call matter, mass, okay, and the other one, which is expressed by longitudinal transverse force and motion, transverse electromagnetism expressed in frequency and amplitude, what we call electricity. So dielectricity, electrostatics, electricity, magnetism, and quote-unquote gravity are one thing only. It's our only pathetic human understanding of the nature of the universe that we think these are four separate things. Really, they're just one thing. They're a hydra, a single beast with four heads, if you want to talk about it that way. Thanks for watching.
That's what I was just actually thinking about tonight. Let me stop this. You just even minimize it. What happens if I minimize it? Oh, that guy better shut up. OBS is still going? Okay, cool. It's me. Yeah, I was wondering today about positive and negative. What's the opposite of positive and negative? But I think KenWheeler just fucking said it there for us. Love you guys. Keep on thinking, keep on questioning.